How's it going? Dave from Comic Book Investments. So as you know, the comic book market has been going down ever since its comic boom in like early 2021. And then it just started going down over and over. If you've seen my videos, you know that comic books have been dropping by, 60, 70, sometimes even 90% of what their value was a few years ago. But I think over the next 6 months, the comic book market will be the lowest it will be ever. And I think that's when it's going to start to rebound. I think later, probably around early summer to early fall of next year, 2024, I think that's when we're going to have a turn and everything will start going back up. I think prices will still be dropping through November and December, as the holiday time is actually a really tough time for comics in general. And then it will probably sink at its lowest or right around there, somewhere around December through February will be the lowest. And then it'll start slowly coming back up. And that's why I think the turnaround will be a little bit after that. We'll see the turnaround. Now, as you guys may or may not know, I am a comic book dealer. This is what I do full time. So this is my judgment call on what I think the comic book market is going to be doing. And this is what I think. This is what I talk to like other people about, like behind closed doors, like my dad, my brother, things like that. And this is what I've been doing for 15 years. And before this, my dad was a comic book dealer, so I've been around it my entire life. So I've seen cycles come and go. So I think right now, the market, not just comic books, but everything in general is just not very good. Yes, things are still sky high in terms of like houses and things like that. Inflation is just going crazy. But I think what we're going to see is a Fed pivot on rates, because right now rates are like, if it's like a mortgage, you're like 8.5. And the Feds have been holding steady. And I think they're we might see one more rate adjustment early of next year, but I think that will be the last one. And then they'll do the Fed pivot, which is basically meaning that we're going to start dropping rates. So when they start dropping rates, it depends. Now, if the Feds decide to start dropping rates rapidly, that's going to be no good, because asset inflation is going to happen. So you want a slow trickle down of these Fed rates to come down. Because think about it like this. Houses are almost sky high. I mean, they dropped recently in the last couple of months, but they're almost at their peak prices. Now imagine, and that's at like 8.5 for a mortgage. Now imagine if the Fed drops it all the way down to like 5% in like a year. How high you're going to have way more buyers jumping in, because now they can afford it. So those houses are going to be even higher, which all that does is people that have assets like homes, stocks, things like that, and now they have money that's a lot easier to get, cheaper to borrow, they're going to dump it in there. Assets go high, even such as like comic books and stuff. And then the people that don't have assets, they just get separated more, because now houses are even more out of reach. Everything's more out of reach for them. So what we want is when the Fed pivots, we want it to be a slow turn, like a slow just dropping down. And hopefully that'll drop it down from like 8, like mortgage rates down to like 8 down to like 5 in like 3 years or something like that. But anyways, back to comic books. Now, I've been around this for a very, very long time. And I'm going to show you some graphs. These are not my graphs at all. These are from Swire House's graphs. He has a YouTube channel. I've interviewed him before. These were fantastic graphs when I saw them. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Like, I was thinking about doing something like this, but then he did it. So, and I'm going to show you some graphs and give you my interpretation and kind of react to these graphs and kind of like justify why I think we're going to the place we are and why things happen to be the way they are. So the first graph I want to show you is basically, this is a graph of like, kind of like, have you ever heard the saying of Warren Buffett? And he says, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. So that means when everyone's like, oh, the sky is falling, everything's going to collapse, which is kind of the sentiment where we're at right now, that's when you should start buying up stuff. And if you look at lots of stocks, you can see the same very much graph. Like they went way up and they're going way down. But at some point, they go down too much, because they should be at a certain level. Like if you look at this little dotted line, this is where it should be, and it goes way too high and then it goes way too low. And what happens when it goes way too low, it's an overcorrection. And so I think it's called the despair. This is the bottom right. And I think if you're looking at this bottom right here, despair, I think we're in that. We're currently in that right now. And it's just going to go down. And I think the very bottom of this despair will probably be, like I said, anywhere from December to February. That will be the bottom. And then it'll start slowly going back up. And then we'll hit back, probably when they do the Fed pivot, either go back to this line, this mean line that it should be probably anywhere between, early summer or early fall, and that's when it'll start getting closer to that mean line. Now, if you look at, this is Silver Age. Once again, the Swagger House, you can go check out his YouTube thing. It says it's comic book index update. He just posted this a couple days ago. But anyways, this has been cataloging every single point of how much, these were all selling for. Just the overall top 100 Silver Age comic books, indexing the overall sales. And as you can see, right here where it starts going really high up, that was in, starting the beginning of 2021. Look how high it just went straight up. It almost like tripling in price overall. And as you can see, it kind of jumped around a little bit and it's been going down. And the most recent figure is down. So it's been dropping. It's going to drop more. I'm just to tell you that right now. Now, I made kind of like a mean line of where it should be, right? So it's been dropping. I would say this most recent month, that's where we're kind of in the despair. We're going down. It's going to be an overcorrection. And, that's fine. And what's going to happen is it'll correct eventually. And right now we're in the despair and it's going to drop lower. Like I said, November is going to be really bad. December is going to be bad. January is going to be bad. I think around February-ish, that's when maybe it will be, January, February will be like the bottom of that despair. And this is for Silver Age. Now, if you want to go down to Bronze Age, as you can see, basically same thing. It's been going down. It's kind of flatlined a little bit of dropping recently. But again, I still think that it's still going to drop even more. You're going to see, now this should be like this line, this is where I predict it should be. It should be a little higher. It's still going to drop. Once again, bronze is still going to drop. Next we have is copper. Now, as you can see, like all of them, peaked really, really high. If you look at like the other ones, you can see kind of them like going up steadily. Like look at Silver Age. You can see starting at the beginning, which is 2018, all the way to the far left, and it's been slowly going up, and then up went way too high. And same with Bronze Age. But if you look at Copper Age, notice how in the beginning from 2018 through about 2020, pretty much flat, slight incline, then shot straight up. That's the reason why for this. And if you look at my graph, look, it's not even as low as it should go. Like, why is all the other ones below my mean line, but not this one? Because here's the thing. If you watch most of my dropping videos, you notice one thing, that Silver Age, on average, has dropped, all the ones I've done, 50, 60%, sometimes 40, depending on the grades I pick and all that kind of stuff. But it's anywhere from like, on average, if it makes the dropping video, it's going to drop anywhere from 40 to 60%. Maybe you see a 70%, but that's kind of rare for Silver Age. Bronze Age, you see a little higher. Maybe on rare occasions it goes up to 80%, but most of the time it's dropped, in the 50, 60, 70% range. Now, once I get to a copper book or a modern book, you see those things dropping by like 80 to 90% all the time, especially the moderns. Now, why is that? Why is those dropping more? Well, the reason why is because they're worth not nearly as much. And so when you have people that get an influx of money and money is cheap to borrow, they're going to go for, those types of books. And that's why those just jumped up astronomical. And the thing is, with those types of books, they're not that rare. Even Copper Age, they're not that rare. A lot of those books, honestly, in Copper Age, they should just be case costs. And when I say case costs, basically what does it cost to ship it to CGC, get it cased, and ship it back, even in a 9.8. Like if you look at, basically a Power Man and Iron Fist run, Master of Kung Fu, you look at the Copper Age books there's barely any keys in there, like actual real keys. You get a 9.8 of a random book or whatever, it's like $50 to $100 for a 9.8, something that was made in mid-late 80s. It's not really worth that much. And it's been like that for a long time. So those books should always stay around there. And because there's just so much supply of those books in top grade, I've gotten countless of collections in where I get those copper modern books and they're all perfect. Like someone just bought an entire rack off of the newsstand or something like that, or had a comic store and they're all just like 9.8s, 9.6s. I get tons of those because one of the reasons why is because during that time, that's when comic book stores became more popular and direct to the comic book stores as opposed to hitting them on the newsstands, something like that. That's when that became popular. And so what happens back in the day is if you had a newsstand comic book and you had a shop or something like that, you could send it back to the distributor and get some of your money back. But what happened with the direct is it was actually cheaper to get the comic book from the distributor, but you couldn't send it back for a refund. So a lot of these people, they would order a whole bunch because it's cheaper. They wouldn't sell. They just stack them somewhere and they sit there for decades. And then someone like me would come along and buy them years later, and they'd all be in perfect shape. So a lot of like copper and, you know, even some bronze, and then also modern are like that. So you'll find them in top grade. Also during that time, people started collecting them. Bags and backboards were more common. They started taking really good care of them. So there's just a lot in high grade. So supply and demand. And a lot of them survived. It's not like a 1940s book that literally had to go through a world war to survive. There was, you know, they took staples out so they could basically take the staples and, you know, recycle them. So, and there's comic book burnings in the 50s, all sorts of stuff. So all those comics had survived that. And now in Copper Age, they didn't. So I honestly think that copper is still going to massively drop. Now there's always those key books that will always be good and hot and everyone will want them. You know, Spider-Man 300, New Mutants 98, right? Those obviously, but as a whole, this was basically the index of the top 100, and I think it's going to drop more because if you look at the index before, it didn't really move. It barely went up. It was just like the slightest increase. Probably in 2018 and 2020, it probably went up like 5%, like as a whole. Obviously, each book is individual, but that's what you should expect. Some copper and modern are not really going to go up long term. Someone asked me that in the comments, and I was like, look, copper, modern books as a whole are not going to go up. There's just way too much supply for demand. Unless all of a sudden you get a ton of new fans coming in and collecting for comic books, it's not really going to go up. It's just too much supply. So that's why I can never honestly suggest certain copper and modern books as long-term investments unless they're certain keys, because they'll always just not really be worth much, always be worth case cost. So that's why I think copper and modern age are still going to massively go down. They still have lots of room to go down compared to silver and bronze. Now, golden age obviously is different, but I suspect that silver and bronze are at this despair line. I'll show you right here. They're at despair going down. Expect copper to keep on going down more and more, lot more. So that's what you'll see. So that's kind of like my analysis. Once again, I didn't do these graphs. They're done by Swaggle House. So check him out over at YouTube. He did a fantastic job. But this is just my kind of gut feeling as a comic book dealer. Like, I do this for a living. So I kind of have to know this stuff. I have to know when the turn's going to be. I have to know when comic books are going to drop more. And I've told you many times on this channel that we're not out of the woods, but we can see the clearing. I've said this many times. The worst is behind us. Now, it's going to drop more. Yes, but I said the worst. The biggest dropping, where they've already dropped by like 60, 70%, 80%, modern, 90%, that is mostly behind us. And what I've noticed, if you watch my, going up and going down videos, that a lot of comics are hitting this like flat line. They're hitting resistance. I think particularly this November, December, and January are going to be pretty bad. So they're going to drop even more, but this will be an overcorrection because I think they're going to start bouncing back up. So whole point of this, if you are looking to buy comic books and you have extra cash, I think this will be a great time to buy. If you're going to sell your comic books, I would say don't wait. Now, each comic book is individually based, but overall, if you watch my videos, you've seen that a lot of comic books have kind of flatlined in the last like 6 months. Barely going down at all. Not like, from 2022 to 2023, it's, huge drops. Now it's just kind of like gone like this, and then it's kind of coasting. So I think we're getting in that despair, and it's going to be an overcorrection, but the next 3 to 6 months, I think, is a perfect time to buy. And yeah, that's kind of like all I have to say for the next 3 to 6 months. I'll do another video of what I think next year will be like at the beginning of the year of 2024. I think it will be, just to give you kind of a little heads up, I think 2024 will be kind of like, in the beginning, it'll be kind of like this. Like, everyone's like, I'm not really sure, So it's going to be kind of wobbly. But I think towards the end of the year, things are going to turn around for the economy as a whole. I think a lot of changes are going to get placed in like the world economics, U.S. economics, and just politics in general. I think that will bring on hope. I think when the Feds do their Fed pivot, I think that will bring hope. And that's kind of like what you need, because right now everyone's fearful. And what you want is you want hope. Like, oh, it's good. We're out of the woods. Okay, this is great. And like I said, I'm projecting that we're not out of the woods yet, but we're almost there. Like we can see it. A lot of people still think, oh, I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. Everything's the sky's falling, everything like that. No, you shouldn't think that way. We're almost out of the woods. I think in another like 9 months or something like that, most people will come around and be, towards the end of 2024, most people will come around and be like, oh, okay, things are getting better. I can see the clearing. But I'm telling you right now, that's when it's going to happen. Somewhere around there, unless something crazy happens, like we go into World War III. I don't know what's going to happen then. But that's why I predict. These graphs, great. Swallow House, cool job. But yeah, that's why I think as a comic book dealer over the next 3 to 6 months is a perfect time to buy.